everybody. It's Mark Pattison. I'm back again with another great episode of Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. And before I get into today's amazing guest, I just want to remind everybody to go to my website. I am headed down to Ecuador to climb Cotopaxi for my 60th birthday. I will be going to the top and dropping down and doing 60 push-ups on top of that 20,000 foot peak. This is going down in December. You can follow along on my website, www.markpattisinnfl.com. Also, the documentary that the NFL did on my Everest journey is out on YouTube. You can catch it now, searching for The Summit, punch it in. It's a 30-minute masterpiece, in my opinion, not necessarily because it's on my journey, but because of their amazing ability to storytell. And at the end of the day, it's about a guy who went through a tough time, got healed, and turned around and helped his daughter, which leads me to another tab on that website, the philanthropy tab, Amelia's Everest. My daughter does have epilepsy, and we continue to raise money towards Amelia's Everest all the time. 100% of all those proceeds go to Higher Ground. And of course, if you want to hear more amazing podcasts of people doing incredible things and inspiring people like me to go out and achieve, tap into that. There's over 200 podcasts that are on there, and I look forward to doing today's. I'm actually over the moon excited about doing today's guest. He's a rock star. He's accomplished so much. He's from my hometown. We're just meeting for the first time today, and he is the one, the only Fred Couples. Fred, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. That was a great opening your show. I'm like, you know, so many athletes and they don't do a hell of a lot like me. You know, people say, what do you do in your off time? You own a restaurant. Do you do this? But what you're doing is absolutely amazing. And I've done a little bit of homework because I'm meeting you through a good friend, John Bracken. Yeah. And I'm amazed. So your next trip to Ecuador, I will probably be following you. I don't know how, but what kind of a time frame is that once you take your first step?
Yeah, no, it's not that hard and it's not that far, but you know, it's really a probably 2 or 3 day. It would be very similar to climbing Mount Rainier. So Mount Rainier is 14,500. I've been up there multiple times. I've had the great pleasure of climbing with a climbing legend named Ed Viesters. He lives here in Sun Valley, and you know, it's unique to a lot of the places you go. Maybe not the Himalaya in Nepal, but you know, when you land in Quito, you're landing at 9,800 feet. So I think where you currently are in Southern California, you might be at 1 foot, and if you could,
yes, or less.
Yeah, yes. Or less. And I live in Sun Valley, Idaho. It's 6,000 feet, and we're going to go up another, 3,800 feet. And you know, interesting enough, and you can't just land here and go there. But like in Nepal, my base camp was 17,500 feet. Imagine that, another 5,000 feet higher than Mount Rainier. I want to keep on that theme with the Mount Rainier being in the great state of Washington, and you're a guy who, as it turns out, this is our first time that we're actually chatting. But we do have some common friends, and for years and years and years and years, I've been the secret golf fan, and I try to play golf, although I hack it up around the course like most people. But you're one of the few guys in the world who have been able to sustain that magic and make that into a gigantic career for you, full-time, traveling the world, being involved in all these major tournaments, being one of the more popular names out there, being in multiple Ryder Cups. It really blows me away at the kind of career that you've had. Let's start back in Seattle. Where did that golf bug come from? Because from a guy, by the way, I went to Roosevelt High School, and so I grew up in kind of the Viewers Laurelhurst neighborhood, right? And you were up on Beacon Hill, so not too far away. And Jefferson golf course, it's a great public golf course, but it's kind of a gopher hole, track, right? I mean, it's not going to be the Masters, right? Augusta by any means. And where did you start to kind of get that bug? Because your swing is so beautiful and it's smooth and everything else, but where was that foundation formed?
Well, that's a great question. So my brother went to Franklin. And I went to a little school. He's almost 10 years older than I am, but the reason I'm bringing him up immediately is he has a big twist in how I got started playing golf. So I moved from where we used to live, which was right down off of Rainier Avenue.
Yep.
by the Dairy Gold, which was where my father worked in the mornings, and he went to another job. But so we moved up to Beacon Hill. I was like a kid out of place. I couldn't handle it. I didn't want to go to school. I didn't know anyone. And so after a couple of years, I started to play golf with really a friend of my brother, Steve Dallas, who was on the baseball team at Seattle U.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was 9 years old and I caddied for Steve. And by caddying for him, he gave me a set of plastic clubs. And then I just started going. The closest course was Jefferson. It had a 9-hole par 3 course, which as a 9 and 10 and 11-year-old, I would play all day long. And so I got $5 a day, which was $3.50 for golf as a junior player. And then I had $1.50 to spend on a burger and a Coke. And I played soccer in the wintertime. And then at the age of like 12 and 13, I just stopped playing golf or baseball, which my dad was my coach, and it crushed him. But I just felt like golf was a game I could think about things. I wasn't a different kid. I loved, as I got older, I loved where we lived. Just the move really, it kind of just threw me for a loop, because then my brother went to college. So he wasn't coming home from Franklin, every day where I could at least bump into him. I do have a sister who's a little older, who's phenomenal. But that's really where golf started. And I will say this, and I say it a million times, growing up on Jefferson was probably the greatest thing for me. As you know, Mark, the greens are tiny. Mm-hmm. So when I played on PGA Tour courses, I actually, once I got going a few years, I was always in green. It was the strongest part of my game was my iron play. Mm-hmm. And I always was in greens and regulation, because if you can hit the first green at Jefferson Park, you can hit the first green at Pebble or Spyglass or anywhere we played. Mm. And then as I got, a little bit off the West Coast, I had to learn about Bermuda grass and how to play out of there. But Seattle was an unbelievable place to grow up and for me to play golf.
Well, not only that, but, when I was out on the View Ridge and Laurels playgrounds playing football, half the time or more it was raining. I was in a t-shirt, and that's just what, I didn't know any better. I didn't go on my first recruiting trip until I was 18 years old, and I got a recruiting trip to Hawaii. I went to a number of different places, but that was it. And so that's all I knew. And just like you, I'm sure you played multiple times out there where, you had these adverse conditions, rain coming down, the wind blowing and everything else. And I know there's a lot of trees out there at Jefferson, but you still have to deal with those conditions. It's not bright and sunny Southern California.
No. And I hate rain now. When I wake up and I know, there's not going to be lightning or thunder and we're going to play, I don't panic, but I don't look forward to playing. Whereas when I was 14, 15, 16, honestly, we played, the best weather in Seattle in the wintertime is when it's crystal clear and it's 34, 35 degrees. Yeah. If it gets to 40 or 42, it starts to overcast and rain. We played in everything. And again, I had a bunch of buddies that would play with me. So it was a no-brainer playing in the rain. I never wore a glove. I used to, but as I said, $3.50 to play around the golf. But way back then, it was like $7 or $8 for a really good golf glove. And my parents said, no, Mas, I can't keep giving you money because you're ruining them in the rain. So I learned to play with no glove on, and that's pretty much the reason why.
Yeah, I don't play with the glove on. I'm not that great of a golfer, so maybe I should switch it over and play with the glove. But you mentioned the word Dairy Gold, and nobody else on the planet knows what we're talking about right now. But that was a old milk delivery service, essentially, where back in the days before you would go to the store and buy your milk, there was a delivery milkman that would come to your door like the mailman and drop off, 5 quarts or something of milk. And that is just, so when you drop that down, that's like a blast from the serious past that I know you legit are from Seattle.
Oh, no, for sure. So my father, who passed away years ago, was an unbelievable athlete and an incredible dad, and loved sports, which when I do my radio show, I'm a lover of all sports. I'm really saying that for my father, because my dad, we would watch any sport. We would watch pool from, snooker. We would watch soccer way back when. And so one of the things, when he got up, he would walk to Dairy Gold. He would put the milk on the trucks that were delivered. And then he took a bus most of the time to the Woodland Park Zoo. He ran the zoo. And then there were sometimes, to make a little more money, he stopped, you know, and for weeks and months at a time, and he worked at the Seattle Tennis Club right down there by the lake, cleaning up. But one thing that he never had a job that was indoors once, and I never have either. So we kind of have that same thing going where he, as a kid, he worked at the Woodland Park Zoo, and then he ran the zoo, and he had a crew. And I used to, as a 14 or 15-year-old, I would go hang out with him a little bit, and drive the Cushmans and screw around. And then they put him to pasture at West Seattle Football Stadium. So I could go play West Seattle once in a blue moon. Then I would see him and then go tee off. But basically, we're alike in a lot of ways. But again, you know, the idea of working hard was, both my parents were incredible. And if I learned anything, it's, you know, working hard is what you have to do. And I just last night was in the car with Suzanne's son, who's 13. He's a very good basketball player. And I said, how good do you want to be? And he says, well, no, it's my favorite sport. I want to be really good at it. And he really is. And I said, you're 13. Do you have a concept of what working hard is? And he says, well, you know, he works with the guy who played at Syracuse. There's 4 or 5 kids that they pay him $25. His name's Rudy. He's incredible. And I said, no, but I mean, you need to eat, drink, and sleep basketball. And I know you don't understand that because you got other things. And I'm old, but most of my friends who have become athletes, who I know, you know, again, he's a very good basketball player. I said, I just want you to listen. I'm going to tell you, most of them have the ball or club in their hand all the time. And he says, I get it. So if we dribble the ball around the block because we're screwing around, I like that. But when I played golf, I played a lot of golf. I play so little golf now, like you were saying, but when I was 16 and 18, well, I left school to go to Houston. And by the way, I didn't go on any recruiting trips either. I just kind of picked a school, and never in Houston. And it was so hot and humid in August when I arrived there. I thought, what have I done? But I think the game of golf in Seattle, this will be probably the third time I've said this, has put me where I'm at. I absolutely wake up every morning and I check out the stats and the scores. Now it's easy to do because they're given to you at every outlet in the world. I used to love the Sonics. I love the Seahawks. I love now the Kraken. And I'm a big Seattle guy. It's just so hard to live there and travel that I really never went back. But I enjoy going up there really the 2 or 3 times that I do. But I'm a golfer. So the golf part in Seattle really made me the player that I am.
Amazing courses up there. You know, there's a guy that I want to understand how, what kind of golfing that you did at O'Dame, if that helped to really nurture. I know that I think it was your senior year, you're playing in the Washington Open, and you beat a guy who's at my course in Seattle South Golf Club, Don Beach, right? And
yeah.
you nudged him out. So he's got to be at least 10, 15 years older than you.
Probably, yes.
Probably. But so you go to a day, and I assume you're on the golf team, you know, there. And you were just talking about, I'm just trying to understand the recruiting process, because golf, well, I mean, it was at a high level with Jack and Arnold and those guys from that standpoint, but it didn't get really like supercharged, to me at least, until the kind of whole Tiger phenomena happened. And it just went from that to that, you know, just much higher. But when you're picking golf, like, did the University of Washington not come after you? I mean, here you win the Washington Open. Like, how did you pick Houston?
I will tell you, so the scenario beating Don B's, I didn't even know what I did. I won at Glendale. I shot 65 my last round. I kind of, obviously 65, I came from nowhere. And I still have the little check, $250 that I won as an amateur. And I don't even know what the pro would have won, 3,000 or whatever, it doesn't matter. But so that kind of put me on the map, so to speak. I won a lot of junior tournaments. I as you said, John Bracken, Scott Williams, there were so many good players. My mind's blank because I haven't been really thinking about. Bob Baldridge was unreal. There were some very, very good players at Oregon and UW. The reason I knew that is because they're mostly from Oregon or Washington, and most of the tournaments I played in were against them. And so our coach Williams at Houston would call every Sunday. And I realized that once I got to school, because we would go to his office on Sunday night, he was calling Willie Wood, who was the top amateur player at the time. And so we would sit there and I would say, "Hi, Willie, how are you? It's Fred Couples. You don't know me, but I'm in coach's office." So when he did that, my mom basically is the one who said, "You're going to University of Houston." They had a great team. They won the NCAA the year before at Yale. And then they had 4 guys graduate. So the worst thing, as you know, you're a receiver, you want to go to UW because you want to go, and you're the second receiver and you don't play any. So
Yeah.
I got a break by going to Houston. The very first week I qualified for a tournament, made the team, and I played all 3 years with a team that was very good. I wouldn't say awesome, but we had a lot of good players. If I would have gone there and maybe been the 7th player, I really don't know what would have happened. So I got there, I played all the time. Blaine McAllister, who is Sun Valley, he's a 5-time champ on the PGA Tour. He was a teammate. And we've been talking more now because he's a Houston Astro nut. So we've been talking baseball, but he was on the team and we had a great group of guys. Jim Nantz was our suite mate.
What are the chances of that? I mean, considering like you're there to play golf, right, and do your thing, and then you know that your career could have gone in so many different directions, but what happened, right, in terms of your greatness. But with Jim Nantz, you know, there's 1,001 broadcasters out there trying to make their way, and some never make it past the regional. You know, maybe some, but I mean, he has become the gold standard, especially for the Masters.
Well, let me tell you. So when I got to school, the first 3 people I met were Coach Williams, Blaine McAllister, and Jim Nantz.
Amazing.
Jim Nantz's father, his company moved from New Jersey to Houston. So Jim was going to University of Houston. He went and met Coach. So of all the guys that were around, early in our, I mean, I had to report there August 15th. So by September, we were already roommates, and our coach would always say, "Jim Nantz is going to be president someday." I don't know why. I was too young of a kid to realize this, but he wouldn't go around saying, "You're going to be on the tour." He would talk about some of his other guys, Bill Rogers and Fuzzy Zoller, and some great Kermit Zarley that went to Houston. He would talk about them. But he never really looked at myself or Blaine and said, "You guys are going to be great tour players." But he did say over and over that Jim Nantz was going to be president someday. He saw something in him. And then once we started going, we got through the first year. We didn't really even know. He was working, I think you called Mark, like for the API and the UPI, getting clips of you catching a pass at the Astrodome against the Oilers and getting a clip from you. And he was selling those. And he was making $25,000 to $35,000 a year as a sophomore in college. And we were going, you know, he would take us to concerts, and he had the money, but he got me to go to class. I absolutely love the guy. As you know, he's in the top of his own. And what he would do in our room is he would come home at night and he would have clips of Nolan Ryan and Bum Phillips and all these, Warren Moon and all these people. And we would talk, and he would say, you know, "Here comes Blaine McAllister up the 18th hole at Augusta." And he would do it for me. And then he would interview us when we were 18 years old. And then fast forward to 1992 when I won, he says it's the hardest day he's ever had doing a show. And I'll tell you, once I saw his face in Butler Cabin, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I ended up bawling like a baby after we went off the air because I never looked at him. I had my hand like this a lot when I was talking because I wanted to get through Butler Cabin. But he's an amazing guy, and I've known him since we were 17 and 18 years old.
Yeah, what you're referring to right now is 1992 when you won the Masters in the green jacket at Augusta. You know, it's funny and interesting because you have your circle, I have my circle. And, you know, I could reel off a bunch of names. Jim Moore, as we mentioned before, we go way back to freshmen in college, and there's a lot of dirt before they became, you know, big timers. And, you know, from Morton Anderson and Howie Long and Lester Hayes and all those guys I used to hang with, you know, with the Raiders. There's a lot of dirt that will always be kept in. I mean, there's not bad dirt, but just, you
Yeah.
know, you go out and it's just, yeah, it's just stuff as we all mature over time and you're in your earlier 20s, and this is before you understand about consequences, because
Yeah.
you're nothing to the world, right? You're nothing to really anything outside of yourself and your teammates. But it's wonderful when you have those memories and being able to be in that position, and Jim in that position, Jim Nantz, to be able to deliver that award to you. He's been doing that now for a long time. I can't even imagine the emotion that must have been going through. So how many years were you at the University of Houston?
I went 3 years.
You went 3 years and then you go pro. And, you know, so I'm just going to go down to the bottom line and tell me if I'm wrong when I have this, my factual one. But, you know, when you talk about, you know, globally between the all these tournaments that you put them together, the Masters and the Senior Tour and all this stuff, there's 84 tournaments that you've actually won.
Yeah, that's a funny number, but if you start counting the member guests that I won or the club championship, they all add up. But I did win a lot, you know, like when you win a skins game, they count that as a win. But really, I probably have 40, in Europe, Champions Tour, regular tour.
Yeah.
But you know, like when I would play in the skins game in the desert and I won, they would count that as the 2001 champion. But yes, it's a lot of wins. It's funny to me, but you know, a lot of them I just forget about. But I do have a lot of spots. I wish there were more tour wins, but that's nor here nor there. But yeah, by playing, I mean, as you said, I'm 62 years old. My goal is I had a couple great chances this year too, but I want to win. I won't ride off into the sunset, but I want to win one more Champions Tour event. And I keep watching Bernard Langer, who's a couple years older than me, and he wins. Yeah. He's still winning 2-3 times a year, and he just won in a playoff just 2-3 days ago, and he's amazing. But I need to stay healthy and keep plugging along and work a little harder. And I honestly wouldn't do it if I didn't think I could win. That's what I say all the time. I don't want to play the Champions Tour just to, you know, finish 20th and 30th. So my goal is get one more win and see where it is. And if it's a major, you know, then I can say goodbye. And my goal is to play with my buddies and have fun, not so much travel around. The last 2 years has been probably for you too. It's been really a struggle. You know, and it's not sour grapes. It's you go to the airport and because not many people in your plane's canceled. Yeah. You got all your luggage, you've already packed up, you're sitting there Sunday night, and they say, no, we can't get you to Orange County or LA. So then you got to go find an airport hotel. For me, that's stuff that I'm a spoiled cat, yeah. But I'm really used to that. And it just becomes, oh my God, you know, now I got to sit and rot and watch this Sunday night NFL football game on TV in a beautiful hotel room, but I'm ready to get home. I love being home.
Yeah, no, that's very understandable. Well, staying on the same theme then, I know that you've had some back injuries over the year that have like shut you down, like just as your career is taking off, then all of a sudden, you know, this tweak and, you know, the mechanics of swinging a golf club is all about your back, right? Yeah. I mean, your foundation, hand-eye, these other things too, but if you don't have a strong core, you're not going to make it. And so where are you in terms of the health of your back and what you're able to do?
You know, you can probably see I'm very twitchy. It's hard for me to sit, but I'm in a great chair and I just try and find pockets. I just had my back worked on, oddly enough, the last 2 days in the desert, and I drove home. I've been doing well. I slipped right before the Ryder Cup on Sunday and Sioux falls off the tee. It's a funky tee, and I kind of wrenched my back, and that was 3-4 weeks ago now, so I've kind of let it heal. But you know, I feel blessed. I've never had a thumb injury or an ankle that was broken or a neck. I can play around my back. I can get it around. But when I can't really swing, then I get away from it and I let it heal. I've never had a surgery. But the idea of I'm 62, I've had a back injury since 1990. And that's when it really, really started. So that's, if you look at it, I mean, 31 or 2 years of I've had great help. I've had a couple great therapists that can get me to play. And you were talking about core. And, when people look at me, I've gained a little weight in the pandemic. I'm not thin and I'm not heavy, but I'm in a spot where I need to lose a little weight. But I'm strong in about 3 places, which really help I can only speak for my game, but I'm very strong in my hands. And then I have a strong, really shoulder turn, and I'm strong in the middle. I wouldn't say my core and my belly is like concrete, but I'm very strong in the legs, and that's how I swing. If you watch, I pick the club up, I make a huge turn, and then I come down, and my hands are an integral part of me making contact and hitting it hard.
What does that mean though? Because when you're talking about strong hands, like the way that's my biggest problem. Because like when people see me grip, it looks like I'm ready to go kick some ass, right? I've got veins popping out, and that's the last thing you want, right? Because you want those soft hands, but you're describing it as strong hands.
Great. Well, great. That's a great way to come back at me. So Arnold Palmer, the way he grip, I have a very strong grip and unusual grip. Arnold Palmer, very soft grip. So I grip the club very, very light.
Yeah.
But when I make the transition from getting back to coming down, the way I've been able to get the strength, it's like baseball. It's easier to explain to someone baseball when you're watching the pitcher, you're not death gripping it, but you're milking it, and then the timing's there. Golf's the same thing. You don't want to death grip it at the start, because then your takeaway, it's not going to be very good. I'm not trying to teach anyone. I'm just explaining for me that you can almost come up and pull the club right out of my hand. But when I transition it, and a lot of it has to do with a strong grip.
Yep.
But it's given me a way where my hands have really never hurt. And it's more of a power position through the ball for me.
Yeah.
So you see, anything can happen. Brooks Koepka, 2 months and a half ago, hit a root, almost couldn't play at the Ryder Cup, and he healed pretty fast. Anything can happen in golf, but a lot of times people will just hit a ball, and they'll shake their thing, and they're hitting a driver off of a tee. It can happen. For me, I've not had any of those little nagging BS injuries.
I wanted to bring this up earlier when you were talking about that kid that you were mentoring, and then what you've done in terms of, because the path, but and I heard this yesterday on another podcast, and I really agreed with what this guy said, that the path to greatness is a grind. Greatness is a grind, is essentially what they said. Yeah. And so really understanding that and being able to be out there every single day and hitting the ball and going to the range, and I can't even imagine the amount of buckets you've hit, just going out there and working on your game and all that kind of stuff. But because you were saying that you pulled it back just a little bit, especially the pandemic made the whole year for everybody super wonky, and we're still experiencing that right now. But are you still in a place where you have that drive to go out daily, or is it more weekly, or how do you keep the consistency, knowing that you want to have at least one more win on the Players Championship Tour?
That's another great question. So I'm not going to go back too far, but when I was a kid, I had unbelievable friends who wanted to play golf. So I went and played. I also played. There's a guy, Jay Turner, who's a few years older than me, but his father, Hans Turner, when I was 15, he was probably 65, and he could really play. And he pushed us there were some older people too. So again, there weren't a whole lot of kids that played golf at Jefferson, but there were a lot of older people. And again, when I was 13, a 21-year-old seemed old. Yeah. Now a 13-year-old, he wants to be around all these 21-year-olds. But the grind was there because it was kind of a fun grind. And again, I learned a lot. I got better when I was 14 and 17 and 20 and 25. I wasn't some phenom at 20 and won every college event, but I knew I could play with these guys. And so I'm a big watcher. Like if your son was playing football and you invited me and he was a tight end and he caught 2 passes, I still would glimpse at him 40% of the game, just to see what he did, who he blocked, what he does. When I go to a basketball game, I know what LeBron James is going to do. I don't need to watch him for 40 minutes. So I look at everyone else and how they run around and do things. And in golf, I would watch how people would practice. And you say, well, you know, and I'm known for not a huge practicer, but I would watch how guys did it. Ray Floyd would spend a little bit of time here, and then he would go here. And he was the guy that I picked his brain, and Tom Watson. Tom Watson could stand on the range 2 hours every day. I could never do that, but I would watch what he worked on. And he didn't stand there and work on every club. He went through his bag, and it took a while to do that. So I would work on a handful of clubs each day, and then the next day I would change. So I'm a lot of odd to even. I would hit odd clubs on a Tuesday, and then when I went to the range on Wednesday, I would hit my even, my 8, my 6, my 4, my 2. And so I was always figuring out something to make it a little more interesting. Because as you know, if you go run a pass pattern, or I go hit balls on the range, if I'm not hitting the balls really well in the range, at 30 years old, I should not be on the range. I should be working with my teacher. It's just repetition. But when you get on the golf course, you have to picture that shot. So if you're playing 18th hole at the Players Championship in Jacksonville, you've got to know that if you cut the ball, you hit it at the water and you cut it. And I could visually see most of my shots. Did I hit them all where I was looking? No, but I was more of a visual player, and I'm not mechanic. I was never mechanical. So that really made my life easier in playing golf, because I wanted to picture a low 9-iron or a high cut shot. And that's what I did.
That's really interesting. You know, I've talked about that too, just from my own personal journey. And when I finally got my big break, I was a junior at the University of Washington. And, you know, I'd like suffered through all the pain and agony of practicing. And then finally I got my chance. We're playing Michigan. We're down by 2 touchdowns. We come back in the fourth quarter. And now with 2 minutes to go, we're down by 7. And we take the ball all the way down the field in the 2-minute drill. And with, I don't know, 18 seconds or something, Steve Plur throws me a pass in the back of the end zone. I went up over the top of the guy, caught it, ended up in Sports Illustrated. We win the game. And, you know, it was a huge moment, right? It was like you winning the match. I mean, it's not that apples and oranges.
No, but it's like right? Winning a tournament.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to say here, my point is that even though some people said it was lucky or great, you know, they focused on that moment. And the reality is I visualize that moment of when you're a little kid, your eyes are shut, and I'm dreaming about catching the last second in front of it. I mean, I'd gone through that catch 1,000 times, like visually, not physically. And then I physically had practiced, you know, the fade route in the back of the end zone, not necessarily jumping over people, but, you know, then it all played out. But it played out of what I had visually said I could do, and it worked. So I'm relating that to interesting when you see the golf course is really visualizing that shot.
I'm with you 100%. People always ask me, you know, why doesn't this guy win more? Or it seems like, you know, this guy is near the lead a lot and he shoots 71 on Sunday. So if you really break down, the best players in the world are the best because they're probably the most talented. Mm-hmm. So then you get another section of guys that come in, and people they pick their brain. And what I see again is I'm a big student of watching. I would never go tell too many players, you know, oh, I think you should do this, or I think you should do that. But when you watch them, you can see that they don't hit a 7-iron 163 on Sunday on the 4th hole. Whereas on Friday and Saturday, they hit beautiful shots. Now their hands are a little tighter or a little looser. You know, they can't control the 7-iron, so it goes 40 feet past the pin and they 3-putt, or they hit it short in a bunker. And the best players, when you watch, for instance, Tiger Woods, I can sit here and I can't tell you a bad iron shot that he's hit. Like I just say, when he was 28 years old at the Buick Classic. Of course, he got to where he drove the ball pretty poorly for a while. You can come up with a lot of those. But again, in his prime, he never really hit him. Now, he won 40% of his tournaments. I mean, he was winning 6 or 8 at a clip per season. But I like to go to other people, and I just find it, like you say, you ran your pass route, he got you the ball up here, you still got it, you came down with it. In golf, that's like winning a tournament. And you caught the winning touchdown or to tie the game. I don't think they went overtime back then. But in golf, when you win a tournament, and someone now, I don't even know what it is, but when the purses got a little higher, they'd say, holy cow, this guy just won $1.2 million, in 1 week. And I'm like, no, he's 30 years old. He's been doing this since he was 12. This has been going on forever. He just didn't win it starting Thursday. He did win the tournament, but he's been busting his tail his whole career. He finally won. And let's see, the big thing is, let's see if you can get to 2 wins or 3 wins. But you're correct. I mean, it's repetitions, but it's more like, I just know my game. I just, like, you probably know how to get open for your quarterback, which some people, it's not that easy. They can run great routes, but they never get open. In golf, I just knew each tournament, okay, at Augusta, I need to drive it really well and putt well. What did I work on? I would stand in the range and hit a lot of drivers, and I would go putt 30 and 40 footers, because that's what you're going to get there. And you can hit a 30-foot putt 10 feet by in the blink of a hat. If you went to, Sahali, you got to drive the ball really well, and you got to be a good iron player. So people sometimes just work on their swing only. I got my swing down, but you got to get your swing and your game down, in my opinion, for each course that you're playing.
I could sit here and ask you questions on and on and on, and I'm going to continue to do so, so bear with me. It was reported, and I haven't asked you about this until I'm asking now, but you, for whatever reason, we all are drawn to different people, and people are drawn to us, and you strike different friendships. And one of those friendships that I believe that you've had very strong, and you felt very close, because you guys have had a very trusted place to be between the two of you, is you and Tiger. You brought him up. Why do you think he was drawn to you, in terms of just, somebody he could trust, considering the amount of worldwide attention that was placed on him? Phenomenal golfer, obviously, and in his prime, nobody could catch him. But why do you think that was between you two?
Besides being on a team, whether it's the Ryder Cup or President's Cup, I've probably had 4 dinners with him. I don't seek him out to say, hey, Tiger, I'm going over here to Joe's Steakhouse or the fish place. You want to come? But when I talk to him or text him, it's normally about other stuff, and he enjoys that, And so I always wanted that from my friends, and I got it. Hey, I'm going to be at the tournament. I haven't talked to you in 6 months, but can you get me 3 seats to a Laker game because you live there, And so when I text Tiger, it's more, how you doing? How are the kids doing? Not now, but for 20 years. And I absolutely love the way he plays golf. I think it's, and he works so hard, which is something I never did. He's 6 or 8 hours a day. Butch Harmon, when he went to Vegas, Butch would tell me, he would chip on this green over there 3 or 4 hours, have lunch, and go. I'm like, 6? He goes, yeah, 6 hours of just funky shots where he'd plug a ball in the back of a bunker, or he'd get an uphill lie. And he loved to be by himself. So if you think about that, if you're me, you leave him alone. And one time, my caddy, Joe LaCava, of 20-something years, he now caddies for Tiger. He says, Can you text him and see if you can get him to play in Tampa, which is an unreal course, perfect for Tiger. It was a few weeks before Augusta, and Tiger wasn't playing much. So I text Tiger a few times, and then I give him the old, hey, you play in Tampa. I think you should play there. You'll love the course. He texted back, why don't you worry about where you're playing, and I'll play where I want to. And I went, but again, it's pretty crisp, and he is crisp with me. But what he likes is waking up at 7 o'clock his time and texting me, because it's 4 o'clock on the West Coast. He just loves to just put that little stake in your heart and twist it. And I enjoy that. I'm kind of like his punching board sometimes, but at the same time, when we hang up, if I texted him, he would get back to me in a minute. And basically it's, love you like a brother and hope you're feeling well. And thanks, bro. And then we're done.
Speaking of which, how is he doing right now?
He's doing well. Again, I say Joe, my caddy, but Joe's caddied for me a couple times because my caddy got COVID. And so I called Tiger, and he goes, dude, I want Joe to go caddy for you. So I asked Joe a lot, and Joe has spent some time with him, and he says, you know what? He's working He's working harder on his body than he ever has. Will he come back and be the Tiger Woods of old? I've never asked him that, but I see him and he's working hard. And Tiger is one to, you get him on the wrong day, he might say, I'm not feeling as good as I want to, but he wants to play. And I think he'll be back. I don't really know. Physically, I've not seen him. I went to Florida to work on my game, and I was about 45 minutes from where he lives. And he says, dude, I got so many doctors, so many people. I'm just so tired. Can you see me next time? And I'm like, you bet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, it's the one thing that's a beauty about golf is that you can keep playing as old as you want, relatively speaking. In football, you drop off a cliff and that's it. Yeah. I can't go back and organize 22 dudes to go up onto my street, right, and crack heads. Not the way it works. But no. I want to ask you about a couple other guys. So the thing to me, again, I look back and I've got such reverence for your game and what you've been able to accomplish, because that's amazing. And there's a lot of guys, is like I was kind of looking down and over the course of all these years you've been doing this, and just Rick Fair, who I know from Seattle, and Peter Jacobson and Colin Montgomery and Stuart Appleby, and these guys have all at one time been big for that moment or 5 years or whatever the number is, but they haven't been able to keep that consistency over time, right? And maybe your back injuries were a blessing because it allowed you to kind of take off and not keep that grind going. And maybe it was a curse. I don't know. I mean, but it is amazing when I look at all these names that I wrote down, and I was just like, God, like, there's just so many guys. It's so hard to be at that level for that long time, but yet you did it.
You're right on. So Rick Fair, when I was 16, I played him at West Seattle in the junior championships, and he was 14. And I beat him, I think 2-1, and everyone was talking about Rick Fair. And he then got on the tour. He played great college golf, and he had some injuries, and he just couldn't bounce back. Another guy I played with all the time, you would remember Dan Pohl, one of the longest hitters in the world, almost won at Augusta. Back surgery, barely played anymore at all. So when you look at longevity, Peter Jacobson he's still playing, but he had a really, really long run. He did have some back. I mean, everyone has a back issue, but the guys you're naming, they're all, well, Colin Montgomery's not, but Colin Montgomery's going to play forever. He's just got the swing in the body, but he has very few little injuries, and he's a machine. I think as he gets a little older, if I could guess, he's not playing as well as he'd like to. But for me, the blessing was that it never got to where I was like done, and I could take 4 months off, and I could get away from golf, and I could come back, and I could honestly pick it up pretty quickly. So I was never like, oh my God, I can't do it. I've kind of lost it. And that to me really, really helped my career. For instance, I've taken a year off once, maybe twice, and then I come back, and like in 3 weeks, I feel like I can hit the ball really, really well. And then it's just doing it and going to a tournament, playing. So again, those things help me. And sometimes I play and people say, oh, it's like riding a bike. And I say, no, it's not really like riding a bike, because I'm trying to beat you, and I'm trying to beat Phil Mickelson, and I'm trying to beat Ernie Els. My bike is still going, but if I shoot 35 on the back nine and they're shooting 32 and 33, I finish third or ninth. So it's that thing of I've kept it going. I had a few years where I didn't win any after 43. I won my last tournament when I was 43. It bothered me, but it didn't really crush me. And I thought I'd never play the Champions Tour. And I think it was such a big deal to play, and I really enjoy it. As I was saying, a few minutes ago, that golf, playing with my friends, is really enjoyable. And by playing with them here in Big Canyon or in Palm Springs, it gets me a little ready for these 50-year-olds and 60-year-olds.
Once you win a Masters, is that a lifetime pass for you to come back and continue to play, at least for those first 2 days?
Yeah, for the first 2 days. The last couple of years, I've only played Thursday and Friday. Yeah. It is. And then there comes a point where they'll, if you start shooting 80, 79, 82, they kind of will maybe call you or say, hey, because you're really taking a spot. And Mark O'Mara, I think, or maybe Ian Woosnam were two of the last ones that kind of were near my age group.
Mm-hmm.
And the course is so long, and I can hit it a little further than Mark, so I can still possibly compete if I do everything well. But Mark said, man, I can't hit woods to every hole. And so he still goes, but he stopped playing. And I'm hoping to play another 3 times till I'm 65. And I love it. Last year I shot 78, 75. And on the 78, I tripled the hole from 75 yards.
Mm-hmm.
So that was more embarrassing than probably hitting it in the water on any other hole there. But I know I can still play there. And, coming in April, we'll see again. But my length helps me from really embarrassing myself there.
So let's picture this scene. I blindfold you, I put you in a helicopter, and you don't know where you're going to land, and I drop you into Augusta, right? And take away all the fans and the lore and all that kind of stuff. And for all you could be in a course in Palm Desert, or right. So I'm asking, would you still have that reverence for that course, or is it because all the history, because of the fans, because of how well, it's just like a carpet, right? It's so pure. Is it more that, or would you just say, like, hands down, of all the courses I've played, this one flipping rocks it?
You're right on spot. So people ask me all the time, if I was going to play one more round of golf and get on that helicopter and go to the sky and pass away, it would probably be at Pebble Beach. Because of the beauty and the last time playing, and it's had majors there, PGAs and US Opens. If I was going to play golf every day, I think, and I lived in the area, I would want to play at Augusta. There's so many different shots. The first hole to the 18th, it's this and that. But oddly enough, I need the people there because my first time ever playing it, I just couldn't believe in 1983 that many people were watching me, but they're watching everyone because there's 3,000 or 4,000 people a hole. There's 50,000 people there. Now, 10,000 were probably watching Tom Watson and Jack Nicklaus a few groups ahead or behind, but still you're playing in front of people and you get used to that. But Augusta is a place where, I still want to play. Riviera, I played in my 50s and almost beat Phil Mickelson there in my 50s. So that's a course I can really play because of the knowledge that I have and really the love. If I said anything, I would say Seattle helped me play Riviera.
Yeah.
And I've won twice. Honestly, if there's a tournament I probably could have won again, I would say Augusta would be one, but Riviera I should have won at least once or twice more. I was right there. Didn't do some good things. I lost to Corey Pavin, but Riviera is a place I think even if I went and played this year, I could do okay. I really think I could make the cut and do okay because of my length and how I fit around Riviera.
I want to take just a quick veer. The name of the show is Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. And certainly your back injuries have been, a source of adversity you've had to deal with, I think, since you said 1990. Also, your wife passed of breast cancer. And, that would be tragic for anybody to go through. But for somebody who their job is traveling the globe while dealing with somebody who's got to be, at home and going to the hospital and going through chemo, like what was that period of time like for you?
Well, it was, I will say, so I was divorced for a while and I started dating. Her name was Thais, and probably the 2nd week, we were getting involved with each other and she wasn't feeling good. And so she went to see the doctor and she had breast cancer. And so she came back and said, listen, we haven't even dated for a minute and I have 2 kids and I'm going to get help and I'm going to fight this. I don't think we should see each other. And at that time, my mom was passed away, and she went through so much. And I thought to myself, you know, I just can't see leaving this person. So we kept going. And then shortly after that, she went to Stanford and got operated on. And then after that, she went to Switzerland for a month. So I was traveling back and forth, hitting balls. I mean, you could ride hitting balls on a farm. And her doctor set me up to hit balls on a farm. The guy came out, cut a little area of grass for me. I would hit balls somewhere. There were no golf courses near where we were. But then she turned it around and did extremely well for a long time. And no one knows. The people at Stanford, you know, they said she probably wouldn't be around for 8 more months. And she almost lived 14 more years. Wow. So she was kind of she was a homeopathic. She did a lot of things. I learned a lot. And then she just ended up, she couldn't fight it any longer. But, yeah, and that would have been in 2000 and right kind of, when I was playing a lot, or 1999. But, golf is golf. I still play. I probably didn't play well a little bit, but sometimes my mind was really not grinding on golf, and I came out and played well at some other tournaments. But, as I look back, I would not have changed it any other way. It turned out to go a bad direction because of money. But as far as the love I had for her and all that, I didn't fight hard. My life came kind of easy. I wasn't wealthy at all, but I had great parents. She did not. But what I had was a knack of kind of street smarts and just getting stuff done. And so by watching her, it kind of made me, in a good way, a tougher individual. She got down. Yeah, she got down to, she 68 pounds. They took everything out of her body, and she couldn't walk, from here to she couldn't walk 2 feet. But then months would go by, and, she wasn't seeing her kids. And I'm like, I never had kids, but I don't know how I would have not seen them, but she's trying to stay alive for her kids. And I felt like I helped her a long ways. And then once she started doing better, she came to Seattle to see tournaments. She came to other tournaments. She started enjoying it, but she wanted to be by her kids all the time because she missed them for 2 or 3 straight years where she was rarely around them. And they were 3 and 5 years old. They had no idea. So I would go home and I would try to take care of them and get Gigi to school. It would be the biggest chuckle because they just knew their mom was sick. They didn't know where she was, how sick. And again, there was no reason for a 3-year-old son to know that she might not be there very long. So we had some good times, and she had friends helping. Some of her girlfriends helped out. Her mother ended up helping out a little bit, but it was very interesting couple of years. To see someone really, really, really fight like that. I wasn't around my mom. My mom was a huge fighter, but I was playing the tour. So she would say, I'm doing well. If you can come in, great. But I never saw her where she looked anything like, my wife did for a year and a half. And so I could never appreciate what my mom went through, although I knew what she went through. But with Thais, I literally witnessed it.
Yeah. Well, look, sometimes blessings can come through adversity that you go through, and, you're better for it, even though the end result may not be at the time, great. But, certainly look back and it seems like you're very grateful for many of the different things that she was able to bring in, to you in your life. I want to talk about one last thing, and that's this radio show you have going on Saris, right? So tell me about it.
Well, it came about, I didn't realize this, but it's been going on almost 8 years. So I went on a couple radio shows, which I've done, but I went on some like this, where they're really good and really fun. And I will say, you are phenomenal. I've done a lot of interviews, a lot of fun stuff, but we're doing it, it's just flying through it. And that's where, someone's good. And I thought, could I do that? Could I like Dan Patrick, but he's on 3 hours a day I don't know how he does it. So I started out doing 2 a month and would call my friends and say, listen, you know, I had Michael Jordan from the Ryder Cup. I had Jerry West for an hour, Jim Nantz, George Brett. And he's on the radio, he says, Fred, I gotta go. And I said, George, where are you going? Well, I'm going out to throw out the first pitch at the World Series game. I knew he was at the stadium. I didn't know he was doing that. And I must have gotten 50 texts. And 5 minutes later, okay, but we were live, California, 2 to 4. He's back there at whatever, 6:05, throwing out the first pitch. So just weird things happen. I really enjoy it. I have a good friend, George Downing, who does all the dirty work. I just show up, we talk, we're actually doing it. And hopefully you're going to call in next week. We're going to do it. Yep. And with a lot of the Zoom, we tape shows, which for me, I would rather go live because it puts a little more, I like the stress part. If I'm using that word correct, I like to know, you know, we can't say, oh, let's start over, but I enjoy it. And I'm starting to, we asked for 2 hours instead of 1 because 1 hour goes so fast. So the second hour they gave us, we're on, you know, SiriusXM, the golf, and we very rarely talk golf. That's why hopefully I can do as good a job with you next week, or if you're busy, or the next week after that. But I mean, I can tell you're having fun, and it is fun. It's intriguing. I like to ask people I don't know that well questions. We've had some golfers on. Tiger Woods was in the car picking up his kids. I've never asked him to come on ever. And he says, dude, he's calling me while I'm doing the show. And he says, call me. And I'm like, I'm on the radio show. I can't. And he says, I want to come on your show. And I got so freaking nervous, Mark. So then I had George. I kept talking, and George, who knows him, he went to Stanford where Tiger went. So he texted him a number. Tiger called in. He had about 2 minutes, and his kids got in the car, and they said, hey, Fred, you know, his little son. I'm like, oh my, you know, this is the best. It's absolutely the best. So I try not to bug anyone, but, you know, we got to get people to come on, and, you know, it's a lot of fun.
Well, I mean, you can see right here, these are all my Fred couple notes right here.
Right.
And you never saw me look down. And so I really believe that the great art of doing an interview is your ability to listen. And you actually are the one who guided me through this entire podcast. So I appreciate you for that. And, you know, I did a bunch of background, you know, so I come in with a baseline a little bit, but, you know, again, I think there's a certain style when people go through and they just kind of check off the questions that they already had pre-planned. And that's just not a great way to have that spontaneous interaction, because if you and I go down and have a beer in Newport Beach, I'm not going to ask you a bunch of checklist questions. We're just going to talk about whatever, shoot the shit, right?
Yeah. And again, I mean, I've learned a lot from Jim Nantz too. Yeah. You know, Jimmy will tell you, you know, you just got to be ready, but he says all the time, be yourself. And so sometimes we do things together, and he goes, I said, no script. He goes, oh, I love that, Jim. I don't even want to know what you're going to ask me. I don't even want to know, because then I'm thinking about it, and then I might not say it the same way that I would, you know, when you ask me a question. So when I do it, you know, we had Charles Barkley on it. All I had to do was say, hi, Charles. He went for 30 minutes, and it was incredible. It wasn't even during the NBA. It was during a tournament that's in Alabama, and I couldn't play. And so I texted him, and we were supposed to get paired. Will you come on the show? And he went on. Coach Saban, I'm name dropping, but these guys, this is what they do for a living, and they're so good at it, and it makes your show better. And that's why I'm enjoying it. And I don't know how long have you been doing it?
2 years now.
Yeah. So I've been
no practice. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, it's just like, hey, how are you? Let's go.
Yeah. Do you know the actor Tom Arnold? He did a bunch of stuff with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he was on the Arnold show. I had him on, and all I said is hi.
He's
And
phenomenal.
then I said bye at the end. I mean, he just goes on and on all these tangents, and it was,
Yeah.
some people just communicate, in strange ways. So listen, you have been an absolute joy. I can't believe I had the good fortune of John Bracken. Thank you, buddy, if you're listening, for setting and facilitating this. We come from the same roots, the same background, love it. And, continued success. And I'll be the biggest fan out there rooting for you for that. Hopefully it's not your last win, but your next win
Yeah.
on the Players Tournament. And good luck with your back. And next time I'm in SoCal, I'm going to get a text, or you're going to get a text from me.
Okay.
Talking about getting out there. I'm going to show you what a strong grip is.
Well, hopefully we can meet. Bracken's a good man, but George Downing's my partner. I'll be texting you. We'll have you on next week. We're going to go Monday, and if we can get 15, 20 minutes of your time or longer, we're all ready, because it's a great story. Go Dogs. And you have fun. Folks, he's going to be November 9th, correct? In Vegas?
Well, I'll be in November 9th in for the Las Vegas, sounds weird, Raiders, right?
The Vegas Raiders, right.
Yeah.
Playing Shadow Creek, which I bet a lot of people haven't played. I've played one time there.
No, you got to know some people, my friend.
Yeah, well, you know the Vegas Raiders. So you're in like Flynn.
There he is, the one, the only Freddie Couples. Thank you.